You know, have you ever really stopped to think about what disability means? It sounds so solid, right? Like it's a simple medical fact. But what if I told you that our whole understanding of it has shifted, like dramatically over the years? Let's get into it because how we see disability, well, it changes absolutely everything.
It all kind of boils down to this one huge question. Is disability a personal problem that's inside someone's body? Or is it a social problem created by the world we've built? And believe me, the way we answer that question, it shapes our laws, our buildings, our schools, even how we think about each other.
So, for the longest time, the focus, the lens, if you will, was pointed right at the individual. The earliest ways of thinking about this saw disability as way more than just a physical thing. It was seen as something deeply personal and, honestly, almost always negative.
And the oldest view of all, that's the moral model. With this lens, a disability wasn't just a physical difference. No, it was seen as a sign of some kind of moral failing, either by the person or even their family. I mean, you can just imagine the stigma, the shame, and the blame that came with that.
Okay, so then things shifted a bit and a more scientific view took over. We call it the medical model or the individual model. And this model frames disability as a kind of personal tragedy. It's a health problem, you see. The person's impairment is the core issue, and the main goal is to cure or fix them, to get them as close to normal as possible. Here, the doctors are the experts, and the person with the disability, they're the patient.
So when you strip it all down, this model says the person is the problem. It sees disability as this personal misfortune, and it focuses completely on what a person can't do, their limitations, their deficits. The whole conversation becomes about what's wrong with the individual and how we can, manage them or treat them.
But then, something amazing happened. In the 1970s, a group of disability activists came along and proposed this absolutely radical idea. They basically grabbed that camera lens we've been talking about and they twisted it, refocusing it completely. And they asked a groundbreaking question. What if the person isn't the problem at all? What if the real problem is society?
And wow, the difference between these two views is it's night and day. See, where the medical model saw a personal tragedy, this new social model saw societal barriers. The problem wasn't a person's deficit anymore. It was the disabling environment they had to navigate. So the goal? It flipped completely. It wasn't about curing the person anymore. It was about tearing down the barriers and fighting for inclusion.
So this new way of thinking, this is what we call the social model. And its core argument is simple but powerful. Society is what disables people. It's the way our buildings are designed. It's our bad attitudes. It's our rigid rules and institutions. Those are the things that create the barriers. This wasn't just some academic theory. This was and is a human rights issue.
Now, this model made a distinction that was an absolute game changer. It separated the word impairment from the word disability. Here's how it works. An impairment is just a difference in someone's body or mind. But disability? That's the disadvantage that's created by society. Think about it. A person who uses a wheelchair has an impairment, but they are disabled by a building that only has stairs. See the difference? It's huge. And once that idea really started to catch on, it kind of opened the floodgates. Thinkers started to explore all the different ways that society creates disability. It became clear it wasn't just about physical things like ramps. It was about our economic systems, our culture, and even the very language we use.
Yeah, the social model was that revolutionary first step. But from there, other thinkers started to build on it, adding new layers to our understanding. People started looking at how money and work play a role. That's the materialist theory. And then others looked at how our language and culture define what's normal in the first place, and that brings us to postmodernism.
The materialist theory is really fascinating stuff. It argues that the barriers aren't just, physical steps. They're economic. It basically suggests that our modern economic system, with its constant demand for a very specific kind of efficient worker, is what actually created the category of disabled people. If you couldn't fit that very narrow mold of a productive worker, you were excluded. Simple as that.
And then postmodernism takes that idea even deeper, like right into our heads. It points out that it's our culture, our stories, our language that invent the idea of a normal body or a normal mind to begin with. And as soon as you create an idea of normal, you automatically create its opposite, abnormal. And just like that, you've constructed the idea of disability using just words and ideas.
So where does that leave us? Is it really all society's fault? What about the actual lived experience of having an impairment? Does that not matter? Well, more recent thinking says, hang on a second, it's both. We need a way to understand this that holds both of those truths at the same time.
And that brings us to something called the critical realist model. Let's break that down. It's realist because it acknowledges the reality of impairment. You know, that pain is real, fatigue is real. But it's also critical because it stands with the social model and totally rejects the idea that having an impairment makes a person less than or deficient in some way.
The key word for this model is interaction. It says disability isn't just about the body, and it's not just about society. It's about the complex, messy interaction between all of it. The person, their body, their personality, but also the culture, the policies, the environment they're in. It's a way to finally honor the personal frustration someone might feel from their impairment without ever losing sight of the barriers society puts in their way.
Okay, I know. This can all sound pretty academic, so let's bring it down to earth. Let's make it real. How do these different ways of seeing things actually change someone's life? To figure that out, let's talk about a boy named Liam.
All right, so meet Liam. He's 10 years old, he has cerebral palsy, and he uses a wheelchair. And all he wants in the world is to go to his neighborhood school with all his friends. Seems simple enough, right?
Well, not so fast. The school principal sees a problem. He's worrying about the cost of putting in ramps and making the bathrooms accessible. He actually suggests that Liam would be better served at a special school, 50 kilometers away from his home and his friends.
So you see, this is where that lens we've been talking about really matters. How would each of these different models we've discussed solve Liam's problem? Because the answer to that question is going to determine the entire course of his life.
Okay, here is where the rubber meets the road. If you're looking through the individual or medical model, you focus on Liam. The solution is to manage his condition, which means sending him away, segregate him. But if you look through the social model, you focus on the barrier, the inaccessible school. And the solution? It's to change the school, build the ramps, uphold his right to be there with his friends. You challenge the attitudes. It's two models leading to two completely different lives for this one kid.
So you see, this is so much more than just a little academic exercise. The lens that we choose to look through has huge, real-world consequences for millions of people. It's really about deciding what kind of world we all want to live in.
When it's all said and done, it comes down to something this simple. The way we see disability, whether we see it as a problem inside a person or a problem out in the world, that determines whether we build walls or we build ramps.
So, I'm going to leave you with a question. I want you to look around your community, your workplace, your school, your town. What's one barrier that you see? It could be a physical one, like step. It could be an attitude. Or maybe it's just a dumb, inflexible rule. What's one barrier that you could help get rid of? Because ultimately, changing the world really does start with changing the lens you use to see it.